So, you've probably heard about the global uranium shortage, right? Well, the official story blames a pretty straightforward chemical supply problem. But that's not the real story. The real story is way more interesting. It's like a geopolitical thriller, complete with sanctions, frozen chemicals, and a single, tiny piece of machinery that brought a massive supply chain to its knees. And really, it all boils down to this one question. It sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? How can a simple ball bearing possibly threaten the entire future of nuclear power? Well, the answer peels back the curtain on a hidden fragility in the global systems we all depend on. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into right now.
Okay, so first things first, let's go over the official story. The one that was widely reported. It was a pretty simple narrative. The world's #1 uranium producer just had an acid problem.
To get why this is such a big deal, you have to wrap your head around this number. Kazakhstan produces somewhere between 40 and 45% of all the uranium on the entire planet. They're not just a player in the market. For all practical purposes, they are the market. And this chart? It really just hammers that point home. Look at Kazakhstan, towering over everyone else. The takeaway here is really simple. Any little hiccup in their production doesn't just cause a ripple. It creates a tidal wave that hits the entire global nuclear fuel cycle. So the official reason for that hiccup was a shortage of sulfuric acid. That's the key chemical they use to basically dissolve uranium right out of the ground. When their 2024 production numbers came in lower than expected, this acid shortage got all the blame. Seems simple enough, right? Well, this is where the official story starts to get a little weird. It's something called the sulfur paradox. See, Kazakhstan exports over 5 million metric tons of raw sulfur, but it has to import the finished sulfuric acid. It's kind of like owning a massive forest but having to buy all your paper from another country. The missing piece? The infrastructure to process it at home.
And that paradox, that's the first major crack in the whole official story. It suggests the real problem isn't actually making the acid. It's something far more complicated.
Which leads us to the real question we should be asking. What if the problem was never about making the acid in the first place, but just about moving it? And all of a sudden, this stops being a story about chemistry and starts being a story about logistics. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. This is a direct quote from the CEO of Kazatomprom himself. He points the finger squarely at transportation logistics and a shortage of specialized railway wagons. This isn't just a theory. This is coming straight from the heart of the industry.
And then, as if to underline it, you have insider reports spelling it out in the plainest terms possible. The main issue is not the acid, but the rail tank cars. And just like that, the simple official story falls apart, and the real, much more fascinating one takes its place.
This brings us to what we're calling the frozen railway thesis. It's a two-part logistical nightmare that basically trapped Kazakhstan's entire uranium supply chain, and it all kicks off with that tiny little component we talked about at the very beginning. Okay, so the first culprit is a piece of hardware that seems totally insignificant, the humble ball bearing. But in a global supply chain that's so interconnected, it turns out the smallest parts can have the absolute biggest consequences. So here's how it all went down. Western sanctions against Russia included high-quality ball bearings, the kind you need for rail car maintenance. Without these parts, Russia's fleet of specialized chemical transport wagons just started to grind to a halt. And since Kazakhstan depended on those exact same Russian rail networks to import acid, the wagons they needed, well, they just disappeared from the system. But that ball bearing shortage was only half the problem. The second culprit is something no sanction can control: the absolutely brutal Central Asian winter. This is where geopolitics smacks right into basic physics.
You see, as this report points out, sulfuric acid can actually freeze solid when temperatures drop. So to move it safely in the winter, you don't just need any tank car. You need a specialized, insulated, and often heated one. And the shortage of that specific type of wagon became the critical bottleneck.
This comparison makes it crystal clear why. A standard wagon is basically useless when it gets cold. The acid turns into a solid block. The heated wagons, which were already super scarce because of the ball bearing problem, suddenly became the most valuable asset in the entire supply chain. A shortage of these special cars meant the acid, even if you could get it, was literally frozen in place.
So how do you escape a trap like that? You don't just fix one part of the problem. You have to change the entire game. And that is exactly what Kazakhstan did, in what was a really brilliant strategic move.
And this is the solution: the Zhanata's sulfuric acid plant. It's a massive facility designed to pump out 800,000 metric tons of acid a year, and it's aimed squarely at solving this very specific domestic shortage.
But here's the really genius part about this plant. It isn't just what it makes, it's where it is. Its true value is strategic. It's designed to fundamentally break Kazakhstan's dependence on that treacherous Russian rail network.
Just look at this map. It shows you the whole strategy. The old route was a 2,000-kilometer international track totally exposed to sanctions, congestion, and winter. The new route, a secure domestic journey of less than 500 kilometers. This isn't just a new factory. It's basically a declaration of logistical independence.
So, what does this all mean for the future? Well, this timeline lays it out pretty clearly. The solution isn't going to be immediate. 2026 will probably still be tight as the new plant ramps up. We should start to see some gradual relief in 2027, and then hopefully a new, more stable market emerging in 2028 and beyond.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. The story of Kazakhstan's uranium isn't really just about uranium. It's a perfect case study in hidden vulnerabilities. And it really makes you wonder what other frozen railways, those little single points of failure, those overlooked ball bearings, are lurking in the complex global supply chains that bring us our food, our tech, and our energy every single day.